So if you could just mute yourself for a second so we don't get echo feedback as I welcome all of you to the ICF Orange County session this Tuesday morning or Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday evening, wherever you're zooming in from. It's great to have you with us. Many of you who are usually with us, you know that Rania Sultan is usually our host. She is not able to be with us at the beginning here. She's going to hope to join us in a few moments. And so I have the honor of welcoming all of you. Many of you I know because I was the program director for the last couple of years and welcomed a lot of you. This year I have the honor and privilege of being the president of this chapter. And I am welcoming you on behalf of the chapter and behalf of Rania. And of course, I do want to welcome our speaker this morning, this afternoon, this evening, David Cory. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce him and then turn this over to him. David Cory has a Bachelor of Education, a Master of Art, and the P.C.C, the Professional Certified Credential from the International Coaching Federation. He is a leadership development coach, trainer, and speaker who started one of the first companies to focus on the development of leadership based on emotional intelligence. He did that back in 1998, so he's got a lot of years with experience with this particular topic. In the course of his work, David has been an invited guest of the Sultan of Brunei, worked under armed guard in Nigeria, been kicked out of a restricted area in Saudi Arabia, chased by an elephant in Zambia, and sang for royalty in Malaysia. Speaking highlights include keynote talks at the Harvard Medical School, 7 times at the Asia HRD Conference, and most recently, the World of Tomorrow Leadership Conference in the Maldives. So again, it's my honor and privilege to welcome our speaker today, David Cory.
Thank you so much, Gerald. It's great to be here. It's great to see everyone. Yeah, excited to dive into this topic of emotional intelligence and share a bit about what I've learned about emotional intelligence over the 26 years that I've been involved with this topic. And back 26 years ago, there were very few companies that I know of that actually offered leadership development based on emotional intelligence. So when I got my website up, somebody is not muted and there's some audio coming through. So because I was one of the very few that had their website up, I started getting these calls from all over the world, and that's led to all the adventures that Daryl has mentioned, and many more that I'm happy to share with you. So I have had the opportunity to talk about emotional intelligence in many different cultures around the world, and I've presented at international conferences on cultural factors in emotional intelligence assessment and development, and really the bottom line there, as you probably know, is that what's emotionally intelligent in one culture may not be emotionally intelligent in another culture. And you really have to know and understand the culture that you're operating in order to do that effectively. I'm going to share my screen with you now, and I cheated on this title slide. I just copied and pasted the little ad that you had on the ICF Orange County website. But my first question that I wanted to ask you was, and I want you to use the chat box for this, what superpowers do your clients bring to their coaching session with you? What are those things that that clients possess, that they bring with them? Just feel free to type into the chat box what you think those are, or you could even take yourself off mute and just blurt those out as well, whichever way you want to respond to that question. Superpowers that your clients bring to their coaching session.
Hi, my name is Louise. I find they bring a lot of experience.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is one of the things about adult education is the experiences that people bring, and so we want to, of course, connect to those experiences. The ability to discover their own solutions, absolutely, Christy, is kind of the basis of coaching, isn't it? To ask the questions, to honor and respect what people bring. all this life experience, their professional experience. Yeah, thank you, Kim. And so, I thought it would be interesting to ask the question, because what I wanted to do was to relate it to this concept of emotional intelligence. And I, so I want to share with you an exercise that we use with managers in organizations in our workshops, to sort of maybe zero in a little bit on this. And we've asked this question hundreds of times all over the world. Tell us about the best leader you ever had, and the worst leader you ever had. And so we ask managers these questions, and for a best leader quality, so someone might say something like used humor. And then we ask people specifically, what is the impact on you of these qualities or behaviors? And so using humor makes it fun, and we compile these lists, and the lists all seem the same. I'll just ask you to type in a couple into the chat box. Just type in a behavior or a leadership quality from one of the best leaders that you ever had in your career. And we'll take a look at those as well. Vulnerability, awesome. Empathy, thank you. Took time to understand. Kindness, open, flexible, fairness, trusted me, curious, fantastic. All these wonderful things. You know what no one ever says? No one ever says the best leader I ever had the most impressive credentials. No one ever says the most impressive leader or the best leader I ever had the highest IQ. That doesn't come up. Or even the best technician. And yet, how people get promoted from positions of management from positions of individual contributor to manager is frequently because of their credentials or their technical skill, or other sort of proxies for IQ, which would be grades or placement within a graduating class, etc. And yet, what people tell us is that those best leaders, and you can look at this list as well, were more about how they treated us than their technical skill or something that is related to their analytical or intellectual ability. Respected my ability to do what I was hired to do, made me want to prove them correct. Absolutely, Sharon, and on. We hear about about managers who cared about me, managers who took an interest in me personally, not just as a worker. Managers who challenged me, who believed in my abilities, and on and on. And of course, for worst leaders, it's often the opposite of those things. Just type in a couple of worst. Just think about your worst leader for a moment. Type in a couple of those. Worst leader you ever had. What did they do? How were they in the workplace? Technical skills versus people skills. Yes, absolutely, Kim. They lied, they were demeaning, they were egocentric, critical of others, power hungry, tyrannical, patronizing. Yeah, absolutely. And when we look at the impact of these behaviors on others, we find that it drives performance down. The exact opposite of what these leaders are actually trying to do, which is improve performance or organizational effectiveness. They actually drive it down. And so there's no connection between their behavior and an awareness of the impact. And so we frequently talk in our workshops about the disconnect between intention and impact frequently. And so it's very important. Arrogant, stayed away as much as possible. Absolutely, Sharon. These leaders have no idea this incredible negative impact that they have on people. And so, when we're coaching managers, we're learning more about whether they are practicing more of those best leader behaviors or more of those worst leader behaviors. And so we frequently say in the workshop after we've done this exercise, okay, so what do we do about this? Because you've got a range of leaders that you're not going
Hey,
to.
Caleb.
Hey, Christy. The AC people are here,
Mhm.
but they need access to the thermostat. Is there a way to unlock it?
Yep. Let me do that right now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind leaving your mic muted, unless you want to ask a question, by all means, ask a question. So what do we do about this? Well, we need to coach people and or teach people about how to do more of these things that best leaders do. How do you learn to do that? Where did that come from? And when we ask people to think about the best leaders they ever had and how they learned to be leaders like that, we kind of have to go back a long ways. It's like, how did you learn to treat people the way you treat them? Well, a variety of ways, and isn't it interesting that many of the impacts for best leaders and even worst leaders are emotional impacts? If you look back over the list, someone says distracted, someone says that well, you didn't talk about the demeaning. You felt demeaned. We frequently talk with managers about this balance between getting results, which they're required to get, and the impact on people, and getting that balance correct. And if you've got the balance tipped in either one way or the other, as Kim mentions, if the focus is on technical skills versus the impact on people, then you've got it wrong. And you're going to have other organizational issues as a result. For example, anyone can go on glassdoor.com and find out more about what it's like to work for a particular company. And they're not going to come to your company. You're not going to attract top talent if your organization has a reputation for not being a great place to work. And it is leaders, it is effective leaders, leaders who do what these best leaders do, that create a great workplace, the one that you want to be in and look forward to being in. So what are we going to teach these people if we're going to teach them to be more like the best leaders on the best leader list? Well, we need a model of skills and competencies. This is the one that we use. This model, as it turns out, it's a model of emotional skills. And it provides this incredible framework for coaching. It is the foundation or the basis or the framework for the emotional quotient inventory, which was the world's first scientifically validated assessment for emotional intelligence, originally created in the early 80s by Reuven Bar-On. And then he used it for 13 years in his postdoctoral research in cultures all over the world before it was published by the publishing company MHS, which stands for Multi Health Systems. Multi Health Systems is the largest publisher of psychometrics in Canada, and they have offices all over the world now. But the EQI has been updated, and they are continuously working on it, and it is this fantastic assessment tool. But it's important to understand, if you never use the assessment tool, if you don't even like assessment tools, just take a look at this model for a moment. This is a model of skills and competencies that we all learn throughout our lives, through our socialization. We learn something about how to perceive ourselves. And people say, well, how can self-perception be a skill or a competency? How can self-regard be a skill or a competency? Well, what we know is that there are ways that we can regard ourselves that absolutely support our goal achievement. And there are ways that we regard ourselves that where we are absolutely in our own way, and we recognize that. So it may not be some of these things may not be grammatically correct, but they are referring to discrete emotional skills, which is interesting. So where do we learn self-regard? We probably learn self-regard as babes in arms. And we learned then that we were valuable, that we were loved, that we were worthy and deserving. And then it's all the messages that get delivered to us throughout our lives. And even more importantly, the ones we choose to believe. And how those messages get sent are through our family of origins, through pop culture and the media. Imagine a child comes home from school, turns on the television. What are the main characters in their favorite show? What do they look like? Do they have the same skin color? Do they have the same kind of cultural influence? Or are they different? And if they're different, then where do they fit? Where do they belong? So this whole idea of knowing oneself and understanding oneself is all part of self-regard. Self-actualization is what we do. You're all familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and self-actualization, getting to do what has meaning and purpose that leads to fulfillment for us is so critical and important that we are involved in what has meaning and purpose. And you probably are coaching clients right now who are probably not in the right job, and it's less fulfilling, and of course, because it has less meaning and purpose than something else would have for them. And then we've got emotional self-awareness. How do we know what our values are so that we can, choose a role that is in alignment with our values? Well, it's emotional self-awareness. Are we in touch and in tune with our own emotions? So while all these skills were learned by us in some way, some fashion through our socialization, we can help people to improve their skill in these areas if we understand them, and if we have tactics and strategies that we can co-create that are going to work for our clients. So what I thought we'd do is, and by the way, why emotions? Well, because we experience life through our emotions. We interesting study out of Duke University using functional magnetic resonance imaging, and fMRI. I find this kind of shocking, was only invented in 1990. So, we kind of think that neuroscience has this decades old body of research. Well, actually, it wasn't until 1990 that we truly understood the incredible role that emotions have in our behavior, in our lives, in the function of our brains. We don't apply logic in an emotional vacuum. There are always emotions. There are emotions about the problem, emotions about the people we're solving problems with. And so it is critical and important to understand that we human beings talking about emotion is a little bit like fish sitting around talking about water. We live in this sea of emotions, and so how do we become more intelligent about that, more intelligent about emotions? And unfortunately, there's not a group of people that all can get together and agree on a definition for emotional intelligence. My definition is that it's being intelligent about emotions. That's what emotional intelligence is. And given that emotions are life, you've all heard of Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences. Well, probably there's just one intelligence, and it happens to be emotional. That's just the way our brains work. And so I think that ultimately and eventually we will get around to emotional intelligence not as a thing, but as the thing. And you all coach emotional intelligence already. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you anything new here today. However, maybe understanding emotional intelligence as human effectiveness, that might be helpful. That we're really talking about effectiveness. We're not talking about being a particular way as being good. We're talking about a set of skills which we all have to find in an optimal balance for us, given our roles and given the work that we do and given our goals. And so, as you can imagine, there is probably a right balance of these skills to create a valuable company. And you think about some of the people who've created valuable companies: Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates. And what would their balance of these skills be? Well, they would probably be over focused on some at the expense of some others, making them less effective friends. For example, if you read Steve Jobs' biography, that he had a terrible time with friendships. He had a terrible time with family relationships because he had an overfocus on other things. Yes, he had incredible accomplishments, but again, what do you really want in your life? And peace and serenity were things that were elusive to Steve Jobs. What do we really want in our lives? Many people want to find some self-acceptance, to be okay with the person that they are. And so self-perception becomes critical and important. So I thought we'd just sort of go through each one of these categories of skills and talk a little bit about what it might mean for you in working with your coaching clients, how it might be helpful to do so. So here in self-perception, as I mentioned, this has to do with our ability to know how we operate emotionally, to really understand us, and to accept ourselves the way we are, to respect ourselves, to know ourselves. Evidence of people who do this well they are doing what they love. We get a sense of confidence from them. They're confident. They live life on purpose. Their talk matches their walk. Their walk matches their talk. There's an integrity there that we notice. And for coaches, very quickly, I'll just see if you have any thoughts on this. And feel free to, again, take yourself off mute and respond. How can you support the self-regard of others? What do we coaches do with our clients in a coaching session to really support the self-regard of others? Any thoughts on this? I know you have lots of thoughts on this, but since no one's saying anything, um, a skill that absolutely, Diana, what gives you energy, helping people to try to connect in to what's valuable for them, what are priorities for them. Some of you do values exercises with your clients. This is one way to help people to align themselves with their values, to align their goals with their values. Absolutely, really the core. We're helping clients to be more aware of and to shift. Absolutely, yes. Underline what you're hearing from them. Absolutely, Gene. And strength-based assessment, core values, purpose, leadership brand, inquiring what is life-giving to them. Absolutely. This is all going to contribute and help with self-perception. Personal purpose statement creation. Absolutely, Robert. Thank you for all of those. And just think about something as simple as an acknowledgement. Quite frequently, managers that we're coaching will gloss over a fairly significant achievement. And it's just like, okay, so put on the brakes for a moment. Let's just back up for a moment. I just want to acknowledge this achievement of yours. Tell me, what's that like? The fact that you have achieved this thing that is of significance. And really getting them, we don't celebrate enough. We don't acknowledge enough. We don't recognize and appreciate enough. We coaches need to sort of, put on the brakes and say, just wait a second. We need to celebrate this. And what we're wanting to shift with self-perception is we're trying to shift away from external validation to internal validation. We want people to feel good about what they've done, not check a box. Because many of our leaders that we're coaching, they're checking boxes. I had one guy tell me the other day that he was 40 and he had a goal to be a senior vice president by 35, and he didn't make his goal. So we have to re-examine those things and recognize them as relatively arbitrary. And then acknowledge what is and have people really appreciate where they are. So we use this image frequently in our training and in our coaching, and it's really a great illustration of us human beings. We are like the proverbial iceberg, and where we're comfortable is above the surface. Where we're uncomfortable because society doesn't support it and not enough people encourage us and challenge us is beneath the surface. We need to get to know our beneath the surface. We need to, there's an indigenous saying, uh, uh, at least here, probably other places as well, but the longest journey we'll ever make is from our head to our heart. And that is our getting to know what's going on beneath our surface, getting more comfortable what it has been traditionally uncomfortable and has a bad reputation. And of course, we're talking about our emotions, we're talking about our thoughts, and our experiences, and the emotional impact of those experiences, etc. They all live beneath the surface. And so the self-perception is getting to know that below the surface world. Self-expression is being able to find our voice, to have a voice, to know what we want to say, and to be able to say it. And so this, of course, is about the ability to express your feelings, your wants, your needs. To get more of what you want, you have to say it out loud. What is that more that you want? What is it that, how can you be clear in your communication about that? And of course, we have models and we have steps and we have ways of teaching these things in workshops, and we share those models with our coaching clients, and we really want to help them to use some of these skills in a way that allows them to really be heard by others, to really be seen by others. And some managers say, why do I have to share my feelings with my employees? And the reason is one word, is trust. This is how you build trust. We don't trust people we don't know. But if I know you and I know what you like and what you don't like, and if I know what your hopes and dreams are, and what you're concerned about or what you're worried about, then I'm going to help you with that because you're my leader. And I need to know those things in order for trust and great relationships to develop. So how do you encourage clients to express more? Well, again, we probably have a number of different responses or ideas on this. But quite simply, for people who don't share a lot, who are kind of, they kind of play their cards close to their chest, we really talk about the cost of that. The benefit, I remember this one client, I said, what is the benefit for you to not share your emotions with others? And said, well, I don't have to think about it and I don't have to do it. Okay, so what's the cost? And the cost is that people don't really know what he's all about. They have to guess, and that's not fair. It's not fair to make people guess in relationships with others. And so the more we can just share and let people know who we are and what we're all about, the better that is. Oh, just one quick idea here. How do you encourage clients to express more? I suggest that if they're really struggling with this, maybe practice with the people that are closest to them in their lives. And for many men, and by the way, gender is a factor in EQ, depending on what you believe about being a male in our society. If you ascribe to the traditional views of being tough and strong, then you will pay less attention to your emotions likely, and you'll have a more difficult time expressing your emotions to others. And so sometimes we have to challenge those traditional notions or those traditional beliefs in order to be more emotionally intelligent. And some of that includes gender stereotypes. So how do you encourage clients to express more? Have them practice where it's safe, in a close personal relationship, friends that they trust, and just when they think they've shared, ask them if they can share a bit more. It's like that breathing exercise where you exhale completely and then you exhale a little bit more. This is express your thoughts and your feelings to people that you trust first, before, because many times people have been burned. And so they are not as open because they have been burned. And then when we trace down those incidents or times when they've been burned, sometimes it's in childhood, and it's like, okay, so that happened a long time ago, and you've never shared openly with people since that time. So sometimes those things need to be looked at and examined. Kim.
Well, I ran a program for our senior managers and operations, and what I did notice with them was they felt very insecure about me coaching them. So I really had to work with them and say, okay, guys, this is a safe space. When I say it's confidential, it stays with me, because there was always that fear of, well, they're going to tell my manager, they're going to tell a supervisor, they'll tell a VP. And I made it very clear to the VPs and the CEO, but it's like Vegas. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Like
Yeah.
whatever conversations I have with the managers stays with me, and it's really unless they want to share it with the director in the program that we put in place. But it took about 3 to 4 months. Like we had monthly calls for them to really kind of, okay, like you're really not judging me and you're not looking at my performance and I won't impact their performance. No. And then they felt like, okay, let's talk, and it was easier. So definitely that creating that safe space. And I did recommend to some of them, work with your friends, your colleagues, like talk to them about the challenges if you're more comfortable before we talk about it here. And when they did that, they just felt like, oh, okay, like there's no judgment. I spoke to my friends, we had a beer on the weekend, we spoke about it, and they were more comfortable to discuss it with me as well. So I agreed completely.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Kim. Yes, confidentiality is critical. And some people think that using the EQI, the emotional quotient inventory, is like a personality type indicator. Which it is not. Personality type indicators, there's generally no good or bad, right or wrong. There just is what there is. However, with the EQI, it actually could reveal if someone is really struggling. And they may not choose to share that with their leadership. They may not be ready to choose to share that with their leadership. And so confidentiality is critical. And we have to make sure that everybody involved knows that they are not going to get a copy of their employee's EQI report. But then they will say to me, they'll say, well, what do I get for this money that we're paying you? And the response is, you're getting a more self-aware employee. You're getting someone who's going to then share with you what they've learned through the process. And we are creating better, more competent managers who will be leaders in your organization, because they'll be able to clearly communicate. They'll be able to build relationships at a deeper level. And so relationships is all about having people understand what a relationship actually is. A relationship, as you know, the base of the root of the word relationship is relate. So if we're not relating to each other, then we don't have a relationship. And many managers conduct a series of transactions throughout their workday, giving people information, getting information from them. Those are transactions. That's not a relationship until you choose to go beneath the surface. And so we have to have managers understand that is critical and important, that they choose courage over comfort. Abraham Maslow said that. We have to choose courage over comfort. It is about what happens beneath the surface. So many things are about what happens beneath the surface. Think about employee engagement. Employee engagement, and many organizations track employee engagement. This is a metric that they keep. That's just how employees feel about the work they do, with whom they work, the organization, etc. And so we have to be able to go there. So again, a question for all of you is, how do you encourage clients to choose courage over comfort? Well, I guess one of the things that we know is that we don't do anything unless we see the benefits, right? Nobody is going to go beneath the surface and share what's beneath their surface unless they see a benefit to them. So they have to understand the ROI. What is the return on my investment of being uncomfortable in my vulnerability with others? I love what Brene Brown says about vulnerability. She says, you know how I feel about vulnerability? I hate vulnerability. And vulnerability is excruciating. And of course, if you look up the root word of vulnerability, the definition rather, it's to open oneself up to harm. Who wants to do that? Nobody. Nobody wants to open themselves up to harm. And yet again, we have to be willing to do that for connection to happen. So, and in a workshop, we spend time working up to it and building the trust in the room and getting to the point where we challenge people to share at a deep level, and they do, and the trust immediately skyrockets. And we've heard back from some of these executive groups that we've worked with who said that their very next executive team meeting after the workshop, there were no more silos. They were actually concerned about working together as a team to run this organization, even though it had many divisions, even though they all had their own areas of responsibility. They saw themselves as a team running this entire organization, and they were there to support each other and help each other to do just that, rather than the typical silo protection, the turfdoms, and all of the strange things we see in organizations, because people don't see that they're a team running the organization. They think that they're there to protect their turf. So again, we need to encourage clients to choose courage over comfort. And one of those ways is for them to practice. We human beings, we're not about transformation. We're about baby steps. We're about trying little things that feel safe to us. We're not asking people to hold their nose and jump into the deep end. That's too much. Okay, so let's just dip our toes in the deep end. Let's sit on the edge. Let's, just practice hanging on to the edge and just going into the deep end a bit. What's that? How can people practice dipping their toe beneath the surface, sharing something of value from beneath their surface? We do an exercise which you may have heard of called "If You Really Knew Me." We actually got this exercise from Challenge Day, which is a Northern California organization, and Challenge Day does this with high school students, where they just finish the sentence. If you really knew me, you'd know that, and then something about themselves. I did it once with a senior executive team, and this woman said, if you really knew me, you'd know Heineken was my favorite beer. Well, essentially what she said was, I don't trust you all enough to share something of value with you, and so I'm not going to. And it was damaging, and it was unfortunate. So we challenge people to share something of value with the rest of the group. And then as the facilitator of that exercise, I go first, and I choose between something that is relatively light, depending on how long the group's been together, how much work we've done together as a team. And then for teams that I think can really take it, then I will share my story of grief and loss, and losing my 23-year-old son as an adult, and what that's like, and how devastating that is, and how I thought I knew something about emotion before I had to learn to live with grief. And then people go on to share it at an incredibly deep level, and realize that, yes, that is the way to connection, is through vulnerability. It's through sharing at that very deep level. And that, yes, it's a choice as well. You can choose to stay at the surface, and many people do. And in a way, it's a little bit like leaving the automatic setting on your camera on your phone. Most of us leave the automatic settings on because we don't know what the manual settings do. Some of you take your camera off auto because you know what the manual settings do, but we have to know what they are first before we can take ourselves off auto, and really leverage these manual settings that we know can improve human effectiveness, because it's more about knowing about ourselves and how we operate, and knowing more about others and being able to connect with them, for greater team effectiveness, for greater leadership, for better customer service. And think about sales. Sales is completely about your ability to know yourself and understand yourself, first of all, and then connect with others, and clearly communicate with them, and develop and create relationships of trust. Then there's this category in the model, which is explicitly about how emotion and logic combine. Other models of emotional intelligence don't even have this. And the reason they don't have it is because many of the leading models of emotional intelligence did not arise from empirical research. This one did. And Reuven Bar-On's original research question, now I'm paraphrasing, is why do smart people do dumb things? And of course, that's the basis for the TV show, The Big Bang Theory. And you all know that, you all know this concept of people who have high IQs, but maybe aren't the most emotionally intelligent. And I've come to believe less in this idea that there is an EQ versus IQ binary in our brains, and come to think that it's really much more intricately connected than an EQ IQ binary. In any case, one of the things to understand is how our emotions help our application of logic or hinder our application of logic. And the evidence of people who do this well, they are able to minimize unconscious bias by leveraging diversity. They get right to work. They don't waste time, trying to avoid problems, or worrying about problems, and they're able to make great decisions. So for coaches, how can we help our clients become more aware of the emotion logic connection? Well, we can we can talk about things like overwhelm or worry or procrastination or avoidance, and talk about whether people do that, and if they do, well, what's that all about? And there are many resources to help people who struggle with these concepts, and so it is about, you know, getting resources on making unconscious biases conscious, or understanding more about potential cognitive errors. If you look up cognitive errors, by the way, there's a Wikipedia page with 240 some odd cognitive errors that we make, all based on emotion, how emotion impacts our logic. And these are things, as you may likely know, about conformity bias and affinity bias, and all the ways that we are swayed based on emotion to use logic. And so it's about understanding that. It's understanding that you are practicing conformity bias when you pick a wardrobe. You want to fit in. You don't want to be completely, you know, different, or maybe you do. It's an interesting paradox that we want to fit in, and yet we want to stand out all at the same time. So we will choose something that you know, addresses the fitting in, and we'll make it just a bit different, just a bit, you know, put our own flavor, our own spin on it, just so that we can stand out a bit more as well. So that's decision making. And of course, impulse control is included here. And impulse control is so critical and important for decision making. If you've ever seen the ladder of inference, which we use to tell people that that, you know, we're all basically experiencing a similar set of facts. However, we zero in and focus on an aspect of that set of facts, one part of it we zero in on based on our socialization. This is how we are all biased. So, you know, anyone who says that our organization is not biased, or our country is not biased, or our culture is not biased, doesn't know anything about bias. It is about understanding that we are all biased. And we also use the power and privilege wheel. If you haven't seen the power and privilege wheel, take a look at that. And you know, it helps people to understand more about diversity dimensions. The fact that the more diversity dimensions that you possess, the further away from the center of power you are. In our society, and it's different depending on which country you're in, which continent you're on, and so it's important for people to understand more about diversity and how that affects people and their relationship with power. So that's decision making, and then finally, you know, I love old sayings, and another old saying that I like is, the ship was never meant to stay in the harbor. Just as the ship was never meant to stay in the harbor, we human beings were never meant to stay home and live life off the couch. We're meant to get up, go out into the world, and the world is a rough place. We have to be able to withstand the storms and the waves and the pirates and other things we're going to encounter on the open sea. You know, we can always adjust our sails, even in a storm. And so it's knowing about that. It's being aware of where we are on the Yerkes-Dodson curve here. Yerkes and Dodson created this curve in 1908. That's interesting. And a couple of things that they said was, we don't do anything without stress. Unless there's some sort of pressure or some sort of stimulus causing us to leap into action, we're probably not going to leap into action. And we all want this on an annual basis. On the annual holiday, we want to do nothing. But then the question becomes, how long can you do absolutely nothing before you get bored and you actually want to be involved in meaningful activity, which is the yellow zone? Because with meaningful activity comes the optimal level of stress. Is it challenging enough for us? You know, are we meeting that challenge? And we all know to eat right, we all know to take breaks and exercise and get enough sleep. We all know that, but we forget when we keep taking on more and more. And so it is about the awareness to know where we are on the curve. And you can use this curve with your clients. Just get it off the internet and ask your clients, where are you on the curve? Because some people like to be, just up straddling the line between the yellow and the orange. That works for them. And of course, we're always trying to find what works for our clients, what serves them, and what does not serve them, and what does not work for them, and what they would like to change to help them to get more of what they want and have less of what they don't want. And isn't that the definition of self-actualization? Getting more of what we want and having less of what we don't want. And so this is these are some of the things that I wanted to share with you and tell you. And absolutely, Chris, impulse control. In fact, it was a study that was done with the Center for Creative Leadership, and they used their 360 called benchmarks and the EQI. And there were 307 managers in this study, and that's the study where they coined the term leadership derailment. And we have leadership derailment because those leaders that derailed are resulting in catastrophic leadership failure, was how they termed it. They scored low on impulse control. So again, if you have low impulse control, you probably want a second in command who has a reasonable level of impulse control to sort of keep you from making those major mistakes. And so that's what I wanted to tell you today. I wanted to give you some thoughts based on our work with leaders in organizations all over the world. All of our projects, by the way, include assessments. So everyone either takes the self-report version of the emotional quotient inventory, or they take the 360 version called the EQ 360, and then they meet with one of our coaches prior to a group session, and then the group session, we conduct the group session virtually or in person, and then we follow that up with coaching. And that's how we've operated for many, many years. And we work with many industry leaders and organizations in interesting parts of the world. And people say, well, what's your niche? Well, we don't have a niche. Our niche is anyone who wants to be more effective as a human being. That's our niche. And that means we work with individuals, we work with mom and pop companies, we work with governments, from the governments of little villages right up to the federal governments of other countries. We work in areas of military and policing, post-secondary education, healthcare. There are very few industry sectors where we have not done work. So that's a little bit about what I wanted to leave you with. Again, in terms of helping someone with self-perception, just acknowledge. Don't let them get away with saying, "Oh, I did this big thing over the weekend." Just wait a second. Let's acknowledge and celebrate that. Self-expression, have people practice where it's safe. Encourage them to practice where it's safe. Practice with you if they can't think of anyone else to practice with. For the interpersonal, help people understand the risk-reward equation that goes on here. The greater the risk, the greater the reward. And that's true for vulnerability in relationships. With decision-making, help people understand that worry, procrastination, avoidance, these are all emotional, have very little to do, or if not nothing to do with their technical skill, and everything to do and many times we are dealing with the stuck perspective, and the stuck perspective is just emotional. People are unwilling to let go of a current perspective that's not successful for them to adopt a new perspective, which is going to potentially lead to a solution. And we coaches get trained to help people with perspective taking, and that is all about finding the emotional perspective that allows us to find a solution. And then ultimately stress management, teach people about the Yerkes-Dodson law. So what do I want you to do? Well, my ulterior motive is to get you to consider certification, to use the EQI, the self-report version, or the EQ 360 in your coaching practice. If you're with an organization, consider an EQ workshop or EQ coaching for your leaders. And if you like this content, please feel free to visit our website, join our free monthly webinars. We took a break for the summer, but we'll start up again in September. And these are things like toxic masculinity. These are things like gender differences in emotional intelligence, cultural differences in emotional intelligence, examining courage, or examining vulnerability, or many of the other kind of concepts that are out there, diversity, equity, inclusion, etc. So that's what I wanted to tell you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take those now, and or turn the session back over to my new friend Daryl to wrap us up.
Well, thank you again, David. Again, if there's any questions, please feel free to ask those now at this point before I just wrap it up, our session this day. But I want to make sure that any of you have questions, or if you had some things that you put in chat that maybe you wanted to kind of follow up on, I just want to give you a moment to maybe do that before I end our time together today.
Lynn.
Yeah, hi. I really enjoyed your presentation. I was just curious, since you've been in the arena for quite some time doing this kind of work, what, if any, changes have you seen as our world seems to be getting more and more complex and a little bit more stressful every day, and divisive relationships all around us? And what I'm just curious about your experience and what you've noticed as a change in this field.
Yeah, a great question, Lynn, and there's probably a multi-part answer to that, but because I've observed many trends. One of the trends that I like is that it appears that we are becoming more emotionally intelligent, that we are more open and more accepting of difference, that the more we talk about diversity, the more people are open to diverse perspectives. I talk about my father, for example. He wouldn't be caught dead pushing the baby carriage with me in it. But now you see young fathers, and they've got their babies strapped in a snugly against their chest, and they're speaking to them openly in public places, lovingly. I think all of that is fantastic. So this is evidence of our evolution as a species, despite very public demonstrations of lack of emotional intelligence, that those are unfortunate. And of course, we always have the holdouts. These are the dinosaurs who insist on war as a solution. War is the extremist example of a lack of emotional intelligence that there is. It goes everywhere from misunderstanding. Misunderstanding comes about because of incomplete communication, all the way to violence as a solution. So those are just a couple of things. I frequently talk about the fact that we've moved away from a command and control leadership to collaborative, participative leadership in our organizations worldwide, and some parts of the globe are still stuck back a ways, but we're all evolving, and so it's about how can we, with awareness and intention, evolve ourselves and others. And this is the importance of transformational leadership, which is not transactional leadership, it's more. And so how do we teach people about the importance of creating those relationships, those great relationships with everyone everywhere?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. That's very hopeful. I'm so delighted to hear optimism.
One of our EQ competencies. Chris mentioned something. He talked about imbalance, and I wanted to speak about the importance of having a balance of these skills, because many people think that higher is better on the EQI. Higher score is not always better. We need to understand how it is serving a client or not serving a client, because you can see how being overly optimistic you might miss an opportunity for empathy. If someone's coming to you and they're freaking out, and you just keep telling them everything's going to be okay, that's not okay, because you're missing an opportunity to practice empathy with that person and say, I get it. From your perspective, this is worrisome. I get that you're afraid of the potential here. But again, allowing for relationship versus toxic optimism, we call that sometimes. So again, finding the right balance. You think you're being assertive, someone else is thinking that you're intimidating or that you're dominant. So we have to use our empathy with our assertiveness so that that assertiveness is effective. Again, what is going to be most effective in a given situation? And certainly divisiveness and people being adversarial with each other, or even the most bizarre thing the last couple of decades is hate resulting from a difference in perspective. These are completely unacceptable for us human beings. We're much better than that, and we need to develop these skills, which are emotional skills. We need to understand that someone has a different perspective. They have a different perspective. Let's see what I can learn from it, instead of simply hating someone for having a different perspective. So again, we got a long way to go, but I'm encouraged that we're on the path.
David, thanks really briefly. Just thanks for mentioning that about the balance, because I use the EQI 2.0, EQ 360, and
fantastic.
People look at it and go, why am I so low? Shouldn't everything be over 130? No, that's not the point. The point is balance. So thank you so much for emphasizing the importance of balance.
Yes. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, you'd like a tool that we created, Krista, we use in our workshops, where we have people plot their scores on a wheel. And then if you've got a jagged wheel, then you're probably experiencing some rough going. We want a better balance.
Well, thank you again. Any last questions? I'm sorry. Okay, I thought someone was speaking there. I guess not. So again, thank you, David, for being with us. And this is really great. In fact, right now I'm in a series of talks about managing our relationships with others, with coworkers, with family, with creation around us, and with everything. And I wish I would have had this presentation a couple of days ago. I was specifically talking about dealing with specific relationships, because this was just really insightful. And I knew a little bit about, as I shared with you before we started the session with the rest of us, I knew a little bit about EI, but not as much as today. And I'm so grateful that Rania, our program director, got this scheduled for us, and it was a great presentation, a lot to think about. That's what I always like about when we have sessions. I always like to leave with kind of more questions in my mind that kind of continue, maybe percolating as I'm away from this, because it's a really great way for us to engage not only with our clients, but probably primarily with ourselves. So thank you again for this. I did put in the chat a few moments ago the link to our ICF Orange County events page, and just want to let all of you know, especially for some local people, that tonight some of you may be able to join us for our monthly mixer at Buffalo Wild Wings in Huntington Beach. So I will be there tonight around 5:15 to welcome anyone who are there. Next Thursday is our monthly chapter meeting, which is going to be at Aliso Creek Beach in Laguna Beach. And that's going to be celebrating and recognizing our 25th anniversary as a chapter with the ICF, as an ICF chapter. And so looking forward to welcome you there. Of course, lots of other events coming up in the fall. Our next virtual meeting will be the 3 A's of coaching: adjectives, adverbs, and absolutes, which is going to be Tuesday, September 3rd at 11 a.m. Pacific time. And of course, we also are advertising some multi-chapter events, including one about metaphors with Lissa DeHart, who's always a great presenter herself. So again, thank you, David, for being with us today. And we are so grateful that you have shared your wealth of information with us. And I hope we weren't as intimidating as being chased by an elephant or being kicked out of a place, because we're so grateful to have you with us here this morning, or this afternoon as it is now. And again, thank you for all of you being here. And I wish you wonderful experiences in your EI with yourself and with your coaches as we end our session today. Thank you again for being with us.
Thanks, everyone. Bye for now. Take care.